You guys remember Taniwha, right? Well, we made some changes, and they're good. Welcome back, folks. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for dropping by, and as always, your ongoing support. Before we jump right into today's content, I must apologize. This is not the Feldegrift deck tech as promised in the community tab. As a matter of fact, we got a pretty bad storm last night, and we didn't get powered back until a few hours ago. So I wasn't able to fully record a full deck tech that would live up to my standards, simply because we didn't have the time. I promise it is coming in the near future, and it is definitely worth the wait. But you're probably wondering, why are we going over an EDH General that we have already covered on the channel? Well, the answer is simple. We have made several changes to the original list that drastically changes the game plan or pacing of our original deck tech. If you're interested in watching that, I highly recommend doing so before continuing on to this video. Link to the original deck tech for Taniwha, the complete list, the in-depth dive will be provided down in the description below, as well as the comment section. If you've already seen that, great, continue watching. If not, loop back. I guarantee you're going to be better off for it. So, with that out of the way, we can finally jump into the proposed changes. The first change is we added something, the big C word, combos.
What?
That's right, we added combos in this deck just because it was going way too slowly. As much as I like beating players down with a 7/7 trampling commander, it's just too hard when he's in only half the game. So we have to figure out how to exploit our deck in other ways. So the first cut here is Star Compass, a 2-mana artifact mana rock that says Star Compass enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color that a basic land you control could produce. Honestly, I don't even know why this is in the original deck, because if our lands are phased out, we can't tap the Star Compass for any mana, because our lands technically won't exist. So we took that out of the deck, and what did we add in place of it? Well, we added something called Power Artifact. It is a 2 blue mana enchantment aura that reads: enchanted artifacts activated abilities cost 2 colorless less to activate. This effect can't reduce the mana in that cost to less than 1 mana. Now you're probably wondering, well, what does this do? Well, it combos perfectly with our Grim Monolith over here. We can attach the Power Artifact onto the Grim Monolith, and we can essentially generate infinite colorless mana. So why have 1 blue mana only every other turn when we can have infinite colorless mana every turn? It seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's pretty true.
And to add further consistency to this combo, we did take out an island, so we're bringing our land count from 35 down to 34. However, it should be okay with all of our mana rocks. In fact, we are replacing with a Basalt Monolith. It has the same effect as Grim Monolith to net us infinite colorless mana when paired with a Power Artifact. The only difference is it's 1 more mana to cast. Next up on the list, we've got 2 swaps that play directly around our commander's phasing abilities. First of which, we've got Pemin's Aura. It is an enchantment aura that we can enchant our commander with that has various abilities ranging from pumping him up, whether it's attack or defense, untapping him or giving him Shroud, or even flying. This was a great card in the deck. However, I found it was rather dead late game, because if we want to pump up our commander, we have to do it at the cost of the commander's toughness, which we need to have if we want to swing freely without worry. And we're going to replace this card with none other than Tefari's Veil for 1 colorless and 1 blue. This enchantment spell reads: whenever any creature you control attacks, it phases out at end of combat. Now, this is a great card that can outpace the value of pumping from Pemin's Aura, simply because if we attack with our commander, it'll phase out at end of combat, acting as some sort of protection, as well as ensuring that it will be in for the following turn. This will also double down on our commander's upkeep phasing land ability, which will further emphasize our stack's effects, whether it is a mana vortex preventing us from ever having to sack another land, or perhaps a Ward of Bones or land equilibrium, making it where no players can ever play a land again, simply because ours always don't exist whenever we want. And let's say we do want to play with our lands again, and we need them on our main phase, just don't attack with Taniwha for a turn, and it will go back to his normal phasing routine. The second swap here is Recall. For double X in 1 blue, this sorcery speed spell reads, choose and discard X cards from your hand, then return that many cards from your graveyard to your hand. Remove Recall from the game. What I've noticed while playing this is it really acts as card disadvantage. Not only are we wasting mana to get a card back from our graveyard, but we also have to discard cards in the process. So rather than bouncing cards out of our hand into the graveyard, let's bounce our opponent's permanents back into their hand with Capsize. This quite possibly is one of my favorite instant speed spells in the deck, simply because it is 1 colorless and double blue with a 3 colorless buyback. And if you don't know what buyback is, it says you may pay 3 colorless mana in addition to any other cost as you play this spell. If you do, Capsize is put into your hand instead of your graveyard as part of its resolution. And of course, Capsize just says return target permanent to its owner's hand. So what you want to target with this is your opponent's lands or whatever else you want to target under the sun. And as long as you pay that 3 mana, as long as the original spell was not countered, it's going to snap right back to your hand. My favorite part about this spell being an instant speed is we can do it as our lands are phasing out on that upkeep trigger. So we have nothing else to play. We can just dump all of our mana into this and have a grand old time. Now, of course, by now, as you've seen, we have added infinite colorless mana to the deck, as well as further phasing shenanigans. But it really doesn't do much else than that. We have no way of filtering this mana, and we have no way of closing out the game, although the bouncing permanents can be fun. So let's do just that and speed up the deck that much more. The first of which, let's figure out how we can abuse Capsize and turn it into a win condition. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to cast this with a buyback more than 100 times in a single turn? We target all of our opponent's permanents, lands included, so they scoop? Well, now you can. Let's remove Acid Rain, which is a 3 colorless and 1 blue sorcery seed spell that reads, destroy all forests in play. It's a very saucy card. It's on theme. I love the art. I'm a sucker for it. But it's a dead card. Let's be honest. Unless we have Yavimaya Cradle of Growth making all lands forests, it's a dead card. So we're going to replace this with Mycosynth Lattice. For 6 colorless, this artifact spell reads, all permanents are artifacts in addition to their other types. All cards that aren't in play, spells, and permanents are colorless, and players may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. So what this is going to allow us to do is when we get infinite colorless mana, as long as we have Mycosynth Lattice on board, well, hey, now we can cast our entire deck, or at least whatever in our hand. If we happen to have a draw spell, then of course we can draw our entire deck and then cast our entire deck. And if we have the Capsize, then once again we can just use that to win as we balance all of our opponent's permanents and reset them back to the Stone Age. Nice! Now, of course, since everything is now an artifact thanks to Mycosynth Lattice, let's protect it somehow. So let's trash Imperial Plate for 2 colors mana. This artifact is a great equipment to buff up our commander. However, we've got new ways of closing out the game now rather than just making our commander huge. So we're trashing this card in place for a Darksteel Forge. For 9 colorless mana, this artifact spell reads, artifacts you control have indestructible. Says effects that say destroy, don't destroy them. Artifact creatures indestructible can't be destroyed by damage. And obviously this is a very high casting cost at 9 colorless mana, but with our infinite mana thanks to the power artifact and Grim/Basalt Monolith combo, it will be very easy to spit out on the table, especially if we have it with a full grip of cards in hand thanks to any one of our various draw spells once we have the infinite mana online. So before we showcase the final swap of the deck to bring it all together, let's do a quick recap about what we've done so far. We've added something to do with our lands phasing out repeatedly every single turn with Capsize. With Tefari's Veil, we now have a way of keeping our commander in the game as well as strengthening our stack's effects. With both Basalt or Grim Monolith paired with a power artifact, we now have a way to generate infinite colorless mana. With this colorless mana, if we pair it with any one of our draw spells and get Mycosynth Lattice on board, we can now cast our entire deck, since our entire deck is now considered colorless. And since everything is now considered a colorless artifact, we can now make sure everything we have is indestructible and protected from all the salt we induce with Darksteel Forge. So with that out of the way, we can finally discuss how we close things out in this deck in a new and stylish way that is much faster hitting harder than ever before. Now obviously you can't hit much harder than a Fire Shrieker, a 3 colors artifact equipment that reads equipped creature has double strike, but there is a way to do it in this deck, so let's get that out of here, and we're going to replace Fire Shrieker with a World Slayer. For 5 colorless mana, this artifact equipment reads, whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy all permanents other than World Slayer, and it has an equip cost of 5 colorless mana. So the way we abuse this is obviously we have infinite colorless, we're able to draw the deck, which means we can cast this without worrying about the mana cost as well as equipping it. And since all of our permanents are now indestructible thanks to them being artifacts and the Forge Online, we're gonna mass board wipe every single one of our opponent's permanents, with our Taniwha being in just fine. Not only that, but this is a repeatable effect. It hits every player, and all we need is a single point of damage to get through, which is quite easy given the fact that Taniwha does have trample. And with that, we will conclude today's deck update. I don't typically update my decks because when I brew them, I really give it a lot of thought, and I don't need to swap out a lot of cards. And I thought that was the same scenario with Taniwha here, but after countless games under my belt, especially going to my LGS, at EDH Fridays, well, there's ways to speed up the deck, and I feel like this is going to do it just fine. Obviously, there are infinites now, and I'm not the largest fan. That way, if you don't want to go the capsize route and just mass bouncing everything, you can still swing out to win with the World Slayer involved. But yeah, that's gonna do it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. Once again, I would like to apologize for not having that Feldergriff deck tech. It will be coming shortly. But with that being said, as always, if you want to stay tuned for all things Metal and Magic and future videos here on the channel, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. So my name is Patrick, host of EDH Brutality. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace out, guys.